Monster trucks pushed Syracuse women's lacrosse out of the dome and off to Cicero North Syracuse High School. In those two events, we had one where one squad bulldozed its opponent and crushed everything in its path, obliterating all that stood in its way. The other was Monster Jam. Syracuse women's lacrosse beat Pitt 16-7. It was 12-1 at the half. Here on Orange Press Pass, we're going to unpack everything from that gigantic win, the 8th in a row for the Orange. Let's roll. Running clocks in the game when Syracuse had a 10-goal margin for most of the contest, and running it here with Orange Press Pass. Jesse Cook, Luke Burgess, Sam Reis, 16-7 the final. Syracuse just destroys Pitt. I guess there's no other way around it, but first impressions from this one, gentlemen, I mean, there's not a lot to say.
No, there isn't, Jesse. But I would say that Syracuse needs to continue to play as a collective. I think that's where they're at their strongest right now. They've got 5 players over 30 points on the season, Sam. That's what's made them so impactful, is that they have all this versatility. It showed again today, and I think that that's going to be the key for them going down here in the season stretch.
That's fair, but it was Syracuse versus Pitt at the end of the day. The best team in the ACC, Syracuse still undefeated against a winless ACC squad in Pittsburgh. And that's sort of how we saw this one play out. So my initial thought is really there isn't a whole lot we can take out of this game, because when all is said and done, by the end of that first half, the starters for Syracuse, their day was done. Done and dusted, a 12-1 lead for the Orange at that point. A lot of the reserves came in for the second half. I think it was more of a mindset of, all right, this is our third game in 8 days. Let's take care of business quickly and move on to our next test, which will be Clemson next week, and that's what Syracuse did.
So the third game in 8 days, like Sam just said, well, that number 8 becoming a trend for Syracuse. You know the outcome, the 8th win in a row for Syracuse, but let's take another look at it anyway. This one was a wash right from the beginning, and it reminds me a lot of what happened last year. Syracuse, a 10-plus goal win over Pitt in their first ever meeting. The Orange got off, started really well. Under 2 minutes in, Natalie Smith with the first goal off a free position. That's a trend that we'd see a lot. Natalie Smith scoring. She had a hat trick. There were 14 free positions for Syracuse. Nothing free about that. That just puttered through. Looked like a hockey goal for Pitt. Officially credited to Maureen McNerney. Syracuse comes up here. They're up 4-1. Now it's 5-1. Emma Tyrell. She was another one who could not stop scoring 6 goals for her. There's Natalie Smith again. Her second. Syracuse up 7-1. 1, 2, how about 3? Natalie Smith back again. Top shelf. Not 1, not 2. 9th hat trick of her career. An 8-1 lead for Syracuse. Early in the second quarter, Savannah Schweitzer, her sister is the netminder, Delaney. Well, the sisters are getting it done on both ends. A 12-1 lead at the half. Say that one more time. 12-1 Syracuse. All right, Pitt gets back into the game. Only down by 10 now after Caitlin John Donato scores. Syracuse up by 12. Just keep it pushing. Behind the back, no look. Syracuse basically beating Pitt with its eyes closed. Megan Rode had that goal. Pitt spins into one here. That one for Sydney Naylor, but still a big deficit. Syracuse up by 10. Keep it coming. Another shot there and another goal. Joelle Caramelli comes up on the free position. Syracuse had 14 free position opportunities throughout the game. Pitt cuts through the net, closes the gap back to 10. The game was essentially over at this point, but Pitt finally stopped that running clock. You get it when you're down by 10. Pitt finally closes it to single digits, 16-7. Syracuse wins it, the 8th win in a row. Let's take a look at the stats from this one. A lot of positives on the Syracuse side. Sam, Luke, a few negatives when you're a Panther.
Yeah, Luke, this was a game where for Pitt, it was over really after that first quarter. They struggled defensively to contain players like Emma Tyrell, who went off and tied a season high with 6 goals. And yeah, for the Orange, it was really easy work of the Panthers today.
It was kind of one of those workman-like wins where you just come in, you get the job done, and then you leave. Emma Tyrell puts up another 6 goals. She's been on a complete tear, and the Orange just outmatched Pittsburgh in this one. I really think that that's what it comes down to. You don't really need to dive into the deeper details this time around.
Well, we may not need to dive into the deeper details, but guess what? We're gonna, because we've got Rahill Jaiswal with us. He was there at the game. And Rahill, Syracuse wins by 9.
Yep.
There's one thing. Emma Tyrell scores 6 goals. There's another. 3 different players had hat tricks for Syracuse in this one. Even 2 goalies played because at the half it was already a wash. I want to know about the defense. That's the one thing where maybe we didn't get a clear picture in this one. What did we learn? What can we learn from this one about the defenders like Bianca Chevry, Superior Clark, really anyone who played?
Yeah, Jesse, I'm really glad you brought up the defense because the defense has been maybe the most underrated part of this team. When you look at this Syracuse offense, you look at this Syracuse team, it's all about the offense, right? The attack, Emma Tyrell, Emma Ward, Olivia Adamson. But Jesse, the defense has had a really good season. They held Cornell to four goals. They've been really solid and again put a lot of pressure on Pitt, forced a lot of turnovers. We all know Pitt is not the best team in the ACC, actually the worst, but still a very good defensive outing for Syracuse, and really, it's been one of the more underrated parts of this team.
Rahill, I want to ask you about, I know I just mentioned how this was kind of a workman-like win. Well, is this the most confident that this Syracuse squad has looked all season? Because it really looked like nothing was fazing them today, and they were having a lot of fun in this game as well. Kind of jumping around on the sidelines, enjoying the blowout, so to speak. I really think that right now the team's having a lot of fun, but are they confident? Is this the best that they've looked all season?
I would say, not primarily based on this game, but over the last few games, yes, this is the best the team has looked. And the main reason is each player keeps saying it's all about the team chemistry. You look at this team, they're really moving the ball on offense well. You guys have talked about it. That's kind of their MO this season. Beat you by committee, a lot of different scores. So overall, Luke, I think we can say this team is finding their stride at the right point, and they got a winnable game against Clemson next weekend, and then it all comes down to Boston College later in the season.
So, Rahill, Luke just mentioned that fun that Syracuse was having in a blowout win like this. It at least looked that way watching on TV here from the CitrusTV studios, but I know you were there. So what did you sense that energy was like being there in person from the sidelines, and just in terms of, you know, what the vibes were like overall with so many players getting playing time in this game?
Yeah, Seb, you know, the vibes on this team, I think, are the best they've ever been. And just in general, throughout the whole season, every time Kate Mashevsky goes for a draw, they're all moving their sticks up and down, screaming, "Let's go, Kate." And even on the sidelines, fourth quarter, Emma Tyrell, 6 goals. She's bumping to Usher. Yeah, I mean, it was a great vibes all around, despite the cold weather. I might not mind you, Emma Tyrell was the only player who's not wearing some sort of undershirt. I don't know how she was able to stay warm during the game, but she did, and it was just great vibes all around, and that's kind of the MO about this team. Again, I mean, a lot of great vibes just overall in general.
Yeah, so Emma Tyrell playing like a tough one. No undershirt, not really making the cold a factor. I know it was a factor for everyone watching because everyone's hands were freezing. I saw hand warmers everywhere, but it feels like Syracuse is warming up for ACC play. They sort of struggled at the end of last season. What really can the Orange take out of a blowout win like this into the last 2 games of the regular season?
Yeah, the main thing you can take from these games is how you start the game, all right? Syracuse, I mean, at halftime against Cornell, you're up 11-2. You're up 12-1 in this one. The main thing you can do against these teams that are not great is take care of business, and you start by getting out to a quick start is key. The main reason is then you can rest your starters, and then you can kind of put it in cruise control. So, Jesse, overall, I think the way this team is starting has been, in the last couple of games, have been great because if you look earlier in the season, they had a couple slow starts. Louisville was a really, really slow start, Loyola as well. So, overall, you have to be happy with the way they are starting games because they can put it in cruise control and get ready for the next one.
Hey, with Monster Jam going on, cruise control, a lot of car themes, also a musical one talking about, and taking care of business. Well, we're going to take care of more business after a quick break on Orange Press Pass. That's Rahill Jaiswal. Thank you so much for joining us here in studio. But Sam, Luke, and I will be back to talk more about this Syracuse team. Some miscues on the defensive side for Pitt, everything going right for Syracuse on offense and between the pipes. All that and more coming up in just a bit on OPP. orange press pass rolling back along. Syracuse obliterates Pitt 16-7. Jesse Cook with you. That's Luke Burgess to my left, and even further to my left is Sam Reis. And we are a live show, so I feel compelled to say that we just learned Purdue did beat NC State in the men's basketball tournament. And they say that defense wins championships. Well, let's start talking about that Pitt defense because, well, there's championships being decided in men's basketball, preparing for one in women's lacrosse, and Pitt did not look up to snuff, Luke.
Oh, yeah, if you're talking about championships, Jesse, then I don't think that Pitt is going to be worrying about that anytime soon because right now, yeah, this Pitt defense just isn't up to snuff, and they allowed a whole ton of free position chances today for Syracuse. I believe it was 8 free positions, which is just an astounding
that they scored
number.
On, yeah.
8, yeah, exactly. 8 scores for Syracuse off of free positions. That's just way too many to be giving up. And I think that the issue right now is that it's a defense that's trying to be physical and it's trying to establish kind of its MO. But you're taking it a little bit too far. You saw some crazy contact inside that 8-meter today, and it was just a little bit too much. You see Olivia Adamson gets fouled there, and then Syracuse capitalizes on offense because they have dynamic goal scorers. You can't afford to give them this many opportunities.
Yeah, and I guess in hindsight, there were a fair share of Syracuse players taking a tumble now and again because of that physical defense from Pitt. And you could sort of tell from the start that it was, I think, part of the game plan for the Panthers to come out with that physical play because when you're so outmatched talent-wise, that's kind of what you have to defer to sometimes. But you're right, Luke, it got to the point where they were overcommitting on some defensive challenges. 23 total fouls. You mentioned the free positions. They ended up giving up 14 of those total. Syracuse cashing in on 8 of them. So it just got to the point where too many of those infractions were being committed by Pitt, and it ultimately hurt them, giving Syracuse so many of those opportunities.
You have to give them some credit, though, because you come out with a game plan that's a little bit ambitious. You're not going to beat this Syracuse team that has so much talent unless you do those ambitious things. So credit to the Pitt coaching staff for the effort, just didn't execute today.
Yeah, every now and then you have to take risks. Pitt's still a relatively new team, 3rd year in existence as a program, so why not try things? It's not like there's a whole bunch of precedent to dishonor with it. And we saw the stats. Pitt did things that it hasn't done in a lot of games, but let's not pretend like the rest of their season has been all sunshine and roses. Those stats were, well, for Syracuse, it would be a down year. I think that says the least of it. But someone who has stepped up big time for Syracuse all season is Delaney Schweitzer. We only saw one half of her today because she only needed to play the first half. We saw a little bit of Daniela Guyette. But was it everything that Syracuse needs to know for the future from Guyette? Let's talk about that goalkeeping, Stan.
Yeah, it was interesting to see because you're right. I mean, with Syracuse being so dominant in that first half, Delaney Schweitzer didn't need to do much in those first 30 minutes, and it was the right decision ultimately to take her out, put in Daniela Guyette to get some meaningful playing time in that second half. And you know, I'll tell you what, to be fair to Guyette, this was just her 5th appearance of the season, and by far 30 minutes the most she's played in a game this year. But it wasn't the greatest showing from her, Luke. I mean, she faced 8 shots, allowed 6 goals, as you see the stats right there. I get there's going to be some rust because she hasn't played that much this season, but we're talking about next year when Delaney Schweitzer will no longer be with the program, and unless they make some moves, get a recruit in, Daniela Guyette could be that next goalkeeper for Syracuse, and it wasn't great what I saw today.
Yeah, it's a good point, Sam. It's important that you get her some reps because she is going to most likely be the number 1. You never know what's going to go on with the transfer portal and whatnot, but Daniela Guyette is set up to be the starting goalie next year, so you want to make sure that she's getting valuable playing time. I don't know if you would call today valuable, but she did struggle, and it's important to have those growing pains because you need to get through the things that are going to cause you problems down the line. You're going to be playing ACC opponents. Syracuse has had a lot of success. And one thing I did want to mention that I was thinking about when Jesse was talking to you, we talk so much about Emma Tyrell, Emma Ward, all these other offensive threats, but we don't talk so much about Delaney Schweitzer, who was the highest ranked All-American coming into this season. She was the only first-team All-American in the preseason poll. So I think it's really impressive what she's done, and it shows you when Guyette comes in how valuable she is.
Well, that's the biggest part of the Syracuse defense. We talked about it in the first part of our show with Rahill Jaiswal, our reporter who was at the game, and he said that we learned that the defense is up to standard, but it really revolves around who's between the pipes. Now you said we can talk about Emma Tyrell however much we want. Well, I'm gonna, because Syracuse is on an 8-game winning streak, and in 6 of those games, Emma Tyrell has scored a hat trick. Not just that, but Syracuse as a whole has been booming in those games, winning by 9+ goals in 6 of these last 8 wins. Luke, this winning streak is one of the best that we've seen from Syracuse in a long time. Not last year. They started off undefeated, just putting that out there. But is this the most confident that we've seen Syracuse play in, I'd say, the last 4 years?
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, right, Jesse? Because you immediately, when you're thinking about confidence, you're going to look at the record, right, Sam? But what the truth is you need to be looking at how the team's body language is game to game. Right now, the body language is at another level. And I think that it's actually galvanized this team with the early season struggles that they had.
Right.
And now, all of a sudden, you're starting to see things become a little bit easier, and the team has all the confidence because they're not worried about the potential struggles. They know what they've gone through. They can bounce back, win games that are tough, and I think it's really collectivized this group this season, which maybe makes it a little bit different from last year where they didn't have to go through that adversity.
No, you're right. There was plenty of adversity, I thought, early on in the season. You start off 3-3, and for a team with so many expectations after that run to the Final Four last year and the way they started, there were some question marks there. You know, what's going wrong with this team? And then players like Emma Tyrell started to step up big time, and it's the offense that's impressed me the most during the stretch. They've scored 15+ goals in all 8 games during this win streak, and you see right there on the screen, they got some big wins during that stretch, like Loyola, Virginia, and UNC, but then also even in this last stretch where there's some lesser opponents, you could say, like Cornell, Louisville, and today Pitt, they haven't stepped off the pedal. They've kept at it, and that's the key. The consistency has been there, and that's a big reason, Jesse, why this team is clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah, Sam, I'd say Syracuse is firing on all cylinders, like you just said. 8 wins in a row, that many goals, that big a margin. It's pretty easy to tell what's working, and what's working is our player of the game, Emma Tyrell. 6 goals, 1 assist, 6 goals on 9 shots. She's converting 2/3 of the time, also getting it done on the defensive end with a cause turnover. Really, Emma Tyrell has been Mrs. Everything for Syracuse all season long and in this game. So, let's take it further in the show after a quick break to talk more about Emma Tyrell and a few other parts of the Syracuse machine. We had Monster Jam in Syracuse. Well, Syracuse was looking like a monster truck. See what I mean after a quick break here on Orange Press Pass.
Jason, let's go see your room.
What do you think? We kept it a little spare, so you can decorate it how you like.
Dinner! Go?
Excellent. Soccer's fun. Yeah, I saw you guys out there. We're the family. Yeah! Oh, I thought you were on my team.
If you love them enough to crawl into a play place to get them to come down, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the-right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Big win for Syracuse women's lacrosse, 16-7. We talked about a lot on Orange Press Pass already, but hey, why not go into some more? Monster Jam was in the Dome, so let's talk about that. A lot of car analogies that we could take into this one. You know, I got my first car when I was a junior in high school. Sam, you're wearing a suit that would have fit me in high school. Luke, you've got a haircut that I would have worn in high school. I still look like a high schooler, so let's just get into it. Syracuse driving all the way around the field, running laps around Pitt in this one. It was 12-1. At the half. Syracuse just firing on all cylinders. We said it in the last segment of our show, but that's a car analogy, so why not bring it back? The Pistons were firing. All right, let's just get to it. Syracuse has an engine on this team, and to me, her name is Emma Tyrell. So let's think about it. Who is that engine to you guys? Am I right, Luke?
You are right. Yeah, there's no real debate here right now, and I think that it simply becomes because of what Emma Tyrell has done recently. I know that, you know, college athletics as a whole, Sam, it's a what have you done for me lately type of business. Well, Emma Tyrell has 21 goals on her last 25 shots on goal. If that's not efficient, I don't know what you want, and she's leading this team. She's found her role, and I was thinking, you know, before we went to break about how you lose two great players in Megan Tyrell and Megan Carney. That's why it took some time for this team to settle in. They had to find their new roles. Who was that new number one? Could it be Emma Ward? Could it be someone else? Well, Emma Tyrell is obviously that number one. She has taken that spot by the reins.
I have to agree with you here. I don't love agreeing with everyone all the time, but I got to agree with you on this. Yeah, you know, I got to go with Emma Tyrell being the engine of this team. And you know, some cars, especially an old one like Jesse, sometimes when you rev up that engine, it takes a little while to get going. It takes a few seconds, and that was the case for Tyrell this season, where, you know, it was a bit of a sluggish start, as you mentioned, and there were some question marks there as to where was that production that many, including myself, expected from her. She just had 6 goals in those first 4 games, but since then, she has been on an absolute tear. I mean, 4 more goals in 6 out of the 8 games during this win streak, tying a season high with 6 today. She's absolutely the engine of this team. My goodness.
She's doing it when it matters as well. She's doing it in ACC play.
This is true. All right, let's put it in reverse for a moment. Back it up. Did you call me old or my car old?
Your car, not you.
That's true.
You're
the
still
car
very
is older
young,
than I
Jesse.
am. Thank you, Sam. Yeah. So if Emma Tyrell is our player of the game, obviously she's going to be the engine, but someone is just riding along. Someone is being carried to this success. We'll call her the passenger. I don't know who it would be. That's why I've got you two here. Sam, who is the passenger on this team?
All right, you might not like this one, but I'm going to say Delaney Schweitzer is the passenger of this team. I mean, I guess today that was especially true for obvious reasons, where she was barely tested, only faced 4. Exactly, and that wasn't, you know, her fault at all. That's just how the game played out, where she didn't need to be relied on because of the mismatch, really, between Syracuse and Pitt in this game. So today that was especially true, where she was just along for the ride. She was there at CNS. She was on the field for the first 2 quarters, but didn't really need to do a whole lot. I guess we're showing all the 4 saves she made to make me sound bad. But this season as a whole, too, I haven't honestly been overly impressed by Schweitzer. Her save percentage is down 10% from last year, and there have been games where she has struggled a bit, and I think the defense has really stepped up for those difficulties she's had between the pipes, Luke.
Yes, Schweitzer, a little bit of a drop-off from last season, but you know, this team has so many prolific scorers, as we've talked about so much, but so there has to be someone who, you know, it's a high bar to meet. And Emma Ward leads this team in assists, but her scoring output hasn't quite been what it has been in previous seasons. And I'll say that right now, she's kind of the passenger on this offense. She had just 1 assist today. Last year when this team played at CNS, she had 5 goals. So you know that she has those scoring capabilities. Sure. Is Emma Ward not a productive player? Absolutely not, because the strength of this team is the fact that they have numbers. They can score with just about anyone in that top upper echelon, but right now, Emma Ward is the one who just is not, she's not quite driving the wagon like everybody else.
So I've got a few objections here. So Emma Ward is scoring multiple goals against ranked opponents, seems like week in, week out. Delaney Schweitzer, we talked about her as one of the key pieces on this team. We said the Syracuse defense was doing its best, but wait a minute, there's a however here.
Okay.
She's allowed the most goals in the ACC. She's 8th in save percentage. So my problem with that one, dismissed. It's out the window. So let's turn it to what's under the car. I'm not talking about the undercarriage. I'm not talking about the road. Who's the wheels? Who's showing off for speed? Luke, who do you think it is?
I think it's Natalie Smith. And it's really, when I hear the term wheels, I think about what's going to get me on that long road trip all the way to where I need to be. Yeah. And Natalie Smith right now, that's what she does. She's incredibly consistent. She has 6 goals over the last 3 games, which, those numbers aren't going to knock your socks off, but they're solid, and that's what she is. She is incredibly solid, and she put 3 more goals in the back of the net today after she's had a tough couple of days. Her father passed away just a few days ago, so she's been going through a lot of personal things. She comes out and puts on a great performance. If that doesn't show you that she's the kind of the epitome of consistency, then I don't know what does.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm going to go with Olivia Adamson for the wheels of this team. And let me explain. I mean, you're right. Wheels, I think of consistency mainly, which she has brought to the table. I mean, we gave a lot of praise to Emma Tyrell, but Adamson does lead this team in points overall. So she can also, do a lot of different things with this offense. Of course, she can score a lot of goals, and she's been doing a lot of that lately. Scored 4 in the previous 2 games before notching a goal and an assist today, but she can also be a great playmaker as well. And, efficient wheels, they can go over a lot of different surfaces, smooth roads, some gravel. So depending on the circumstance, Olivia Adamson, she is the efficient wheels that can get it done, whether that's scoring, setting up her teammates. She can do it all, Jesse.
I'll add on as well. Olivia Adamson, an underutilized skill this year because Mashevsky's been so healthy, but she can also take draws as well. Last year, she came in to replace Mashevsky after her injury.
That's right. Natalie Smith and Olivia Adamson, 2 players who can really put the car in drive. We're going to gas up one more time on Orange Press Pass, but when we come back, before we hit the road, we'll talk about what else is going on in the ACC and college lacrosse, as well as what's next for Syracuse.
They told me a bottle couldn't dream. That I would never become a superhero. But I learned how to fly. Just to come back in a new disguise. And be the hero that I've always wanted to be.
We're in the final leg of our journey here on Orange Press Pass. Syracuse won the game a long time ago, 16-7, the final score over Pitt. One last time on tonight's program, Jesse Cook with you next to Luke Burgess and Sam Reis. And this was a blowout, to say the very least. Syracuse came out on top of Pitt by a large margin. But let's think about what's coming up next for Syracuse. Another team in Clemson that's relatively similar to Pitt, similar history, both relatively new programs.
Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to down the stretch here, and the season is going to be decided in these final 2 games, Sam. I mean, Clemson is a challenge, but then you have Boston College to close the season out. That's a challenge. That is a challenge of challenges.
Oh, yeah, and to prove your point, look at the first 2 teams on that list of the ACC standings. Syracuse 1, Boston College 2. As long as everything goes to plan next week, guys, it's panning out to be a thrilling regular season finale, just like last year, where it could determine the ACC regular season champ, the winner of that game between Syracuse and BC, this time in Chestnut Hill.
Yeah, BC stole one from Syracuse last year in the season finale. This time, Syracuse trying to flip the script. Here's what's coming up next. Next Orange Press Pass, men's lacrosse, North Carolina. Always a big game. Much smaller ACC there. A lot more intensity games.
Yeah, I mean, right now, Syracuse men's lacrosse is kind of reeling. They're the opposite, right, Jesse, of what Syracuse women's lacrosse is doing. They're trying to bounce back with a big win. They've got a tough ACC schedule here at the end of the season.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Syracuse men's lacrosse, after such a congested schedule so far this season, this is an 11-day gap between games. So I'm looking forward to see how they respond after getting some rest going up against UNC and then Virginia before the ACC tournament gets underway.
Well, that's the men's team. Let's reflect one last time on this game. A big win for Syracuse. Your final thought, Luke?
Yeah, my final thought is that Syracuse needs to continue to play with this collective. Right now, they need to continue to stay like they are because you've got continued challenges coming up down the line. I think that if SU deviates from the way that it's been playing, you're going to start to see those struggles reemerge again. They can't rely too much on one player.
Yeah, we're thinking alike too much for my liking today, Luke. But I agree. I agree, and my final thought is along similar lines, where I'm saying you got to keep your foot on the gas if you're Syracuse, and just keep on going with Clemson coming up next week before that big game against BC.
All right, that's it. That's Sam Reis, Luke Burgess, Jesse Cook with our producer, Rihanna A. Beal. Thank you so much for watching. Syracuse wins.